This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask with your host, Dr. Judith Briles. On the show today, you'll find out where book publishing is going and how to take advantage of it. How to identify and avoid publishing predators. What opportunities are emerging as the book trade evolves in new forms. How to avoid losing money and much, much more. Join us now as a variety of publishing pros will deliver insights and strategies to take the author to the next level of publishing. It's your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Brought to you by AuthorU and the Book Shepherd. And now, here's your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Hey, he's trying to call you. Hi, this is Judith Briles, and welcome to another edition of AuthorU, your guide to book publishing. And I had an experience I wanted to share with you. I write for Joel Friedlander's blog, and I finally put up, and that's thebookdesigner.com, and I do a once a month special blog for him, and I've been wanting to write about this for a long time. So I put up a blog finally on the Princess Author, and I've actually mentioned the Princess Author many times, but the Princess Author has no gender. There's no gender to this person. What they are is someone who really wants to be kept. They want to be told that everything they write is fabulous, that guaranteed they're going to sell 1 million books, that, you know, the laundry list goes on. Surely this is the next thing after Harry Potter or The Twilight or 50 Shades or Gone with the Wind would be embarrassed with what you're putting out, that you're so superior to them, etc., etc. And that, so I went up and wrote it up, and it's become quite spirited since it rolled out last night. And we've had just a ton of comments and going back and forth. And one of them, a couple of them, took great offense because I used the word princess, because they thought it was just awfully politically incorrect and that I was continuing to do the gender thing. And I said, well, I just couldn't come up with a good neutral word that would be catchy to get their attention to do the lead-in. And what's important, what I'm saying here, is when you're writing, whether it's a blog, an article, whether you're even, a title for a video that you're putting out, your book, you've got to have a catchy thing to grab people's attention that says, say what? Say what? Wait a minute, tell me more. And the Princess Author certainly did it. So I would encourage you all to go to thebookdesigner.com and just, it's the top blog right now, and just see what I did. So with that said, we're not going to be talking about princesses today. We're going to be talking about how to make a rock and roll talk with this new thing that is, it's not so new. It may be new if you haven't followed any of these superb short talks that you can find on YouTube, the TED and the TEDx. And my guest today is Hayley Foster. She is the author of a little gem of a book called Don't Tank Your TED Talk. And her expertise is creating messages that matter and showing and coaching you how to do it. So she's known as the short talk expert. She's going to be joining us right now. Hi, Hayley. How are you?
Terrific. I'm speaking to you from the snowpocalypse.
The snowpocalypse? Yes, we are. We're in the snowpocalypse.
We are actually the center of, we've got about 9 inches here, which is totally unheard of for us.
Oh, well.
We have no municipal support for something like this.
You know what? You don't. I remember one time being in North Carolina, and they were expecting the snow, a light snow coming in. And being from Colorado, it's like ho-hum. And right. They literally had the trash pickup people at the edge of town waiting to start doing plowing for this inch of snow that was expected, which is amusing to me since I shoveled another foot off my driveway this morning, and it's going to be snowing again here in another hour. So,
well, I have to say that this is the worst it's been in 15 years I've lived here.
Ah, well, the weather's changing. I mean, people who keep saying it's not, I think they need to get over that. But let's jump into some of the changing things that are happening. And
sure.
You're in the middle of the, I could say firestorm, but maybe we'll say the snowstorm. And that what's happening with the whole speaking circuit, which I have been, I was on the platform for over 30 years talking about my books, and there was no such thing as this thing called a short talk. In fact, we talked and we talked and we talked, and a keynote was never less than 45 minutes. Typically, very often they went to 90 minutes. I could do an all-day workshop and, take a couple of pee breaks, and I was good to go. And that's all evolved. So just give us Hayley, I think it'd be very cool to just give us a background of how did the TED Talk concept start?
So that's really a good question, because I find that the people who are the ones who need to know will be the least likely to raise their hand and say, I don't know. So let's just get everyone on the same page. And a lot of times when I say what I do, people will say, you coach speakers for TED? TED who? So let's just start at the beginning. TED was the brainchild of Richard Saul Wurman, and he started it in 1984. He put together conferences to bring people together from three different worlds: technology, entertainment, and design, which is the TED of TED.
Got it. I get it.
So there were these conferences that had invited audiences, very specific audiences, and they hit on a short talk format of 6, 12, or 18 minutes, and they had people from these different areas give a talk, and then they had long periods of interaction so that they could cross-pollinate ideas, and it was pretty cool. But it was a small conference, and it caught the attention of Chris Anderson, who was at the time a magazine publishing entrepreneur in the UK, and he bought it. He turned it into a nonprofit, and then he broadened the content to include world-renowned experts from every field. So we expanded from technology, entertainment, and design to anybody who had an extraordinary idea, who was very interesting, and the format was to let them communicate what they're passionate about in a situation that was untainted by corporate influence. And same idea of the invited audience and long periods of interactions where people could cross-pollinate ideas. So that's how TED got started. And it was really great for the lucky few people who could attend a TED conference, but that wasn't that many people. It was 2 conferences. One, I think it started in Monterey, and then one, they moved it to Long Beach, and then one, I think, was in Edinburgh. And so it went along, and it was doing well, but it was just really kind of elite. Then in 2006, this thing called podcasting happened. And June Cohen, who is still the media director, this brilliant woman, she had an idea to post a few of the selected talks from the annual TED convention in Long Beach or, TED Global, and put it on the organization's homepage. So I think it was 6 talks that she put up on the conference homepage to see what would happen, and it crashed the website. So they thought, we're onto something. So by 2007, TED.com was born, the TED.com that we know today, and it garnered about 1.5 million views worldwide in the first year. Now remember, 2007, that was unheard of. In 2015,
humongous. It was humongous.
Right. 2015, went viral? Well, so what? No, really, nobody was on. So that was really something. By 2012, November of 2012, TED surpassed 1 billion views. So that's pretty much something. So what happened?
Pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome. And there was this select group of people who followed called TEDsters who were following all these short talks and it had captured their imagination. And what happened was they wanted to expand the opportunity for ideas were spreading, free to the world, and untainted by corporate influence. But it is a nonprofit, and it's pretty lean. I've been to the headquarters on the Hudson in New York, and it really is a lot of hard-working people working many, many hours to do this. And they're very dedicated, and rather than take on more conferences themselves, they got this idea that they would create a license that worthy organizations could put on TED-style events. And they put out a beta, like, okay, we're going to do this thing. They sent out an email to the TEDsters, and one of those people was Steve Kraft, who I am married to, and he at the time worked for NASA, and he got the license for TEDx NASA. And within 20 minutes, they called and said, what do you mean NASA wants a license? And so ours was one of the very first TEDx events. And what happened is it's become a community-based thing. When we started it, we had no idea what to do or how to do it because we were some of the first people. So I'm one of the original TEDx organizers, and the way that I started coaching is I knew that we were going to have these science speakers who are used to, as you saying, they were used to lecturing for 3 hours, and they had 7 minutes. How were we going to ensure that the program was solid? So I created a way to coach them.
Yeah, and not only solid, but also always the nightmare of a meeting planner. Since we should tell all our listeners that Hayley will be one of the featured speakers at the AuthorU Extravaganza, May 7th.
I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, we're very excited about having you coming. But one of the things is that the nightmare for a meeting planner is that when someone decides to go over, and I had that actually with an opening speaker a couple years ago who went 20 minutes over, which totally frizzles the rest of the day until you have a smart speaker who can say, I know how to fix this. And Hayley, we're going to take our first break. We're going to come back and get into some of the nitty-gritty, including some of the critical mistakes that speakers make in trying to do this transition. You're listening to AuthorU. This is your guide to book publishing. I'm Judith Briles. My guest is Hayley Foster today.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Many of us have dreamed of writing a book.
Some of us even have.
Then the hard work starts.
You'll need an editor.
Who will design the cover or typeset the pages?
Who will format the ebook?
If you're a business owner, consultant, or coach with a serious message and expertise to share, the team of experts at 1106 Design can guide you through the maze.
They've helped more than 1,000 authors create top-quality books and avoid the not-so-reputable self-publishing companies.
Learn more at 1106design.com.
Then call Michelle at 602-866-3226. 1106 Design.
Is there a book in you or another? AuthorU will show you how to create, develop, and publish your book without being hoodwinked. If you already have a book out, you'll find a supportive and brainstorming community that's connected and creative no matter where you live. AuthorU brings in national experts for its book camps and annual author extravaganza held each May. It has regular meetings and delivers webinars for its members on timely topics. Through AuthorU's extensive network, members enjoy exclusive benefits, including significant discounts for a variety of services necessary to publishing. The Resource, its online book publishing news magazine, is content-heavy and it's free. If you want to create a book that has pizzazz, punch, and panache, AuthorU is for you. If you're a hobbyist or a casual author, it's not. Join AuthorU today through its website at AuthorU.org. Follow AuthorU on Twitter at AuthorU and on Facebook at AuthorU, where timely author and publishing tips and articles are posted daily. AuthorU, where the author goes to become seriously successful.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network. Radio with a cutting edge.
First impressions are everything in the world of book publishing. Whether your book is an ebook, a print version, or both, your book cover needs to pop, sizzle, and sparkle to immediately capture the attention of your audience. And your book's interior needs to be just as dynamic and reflect the professionalism your readers demand. Nick Sellinger of NZ Graphics has won numerous national and international book awards for his cover designs and interior layouts. With over 20 years of experience in graphic design, he knows what it takes to create award-winning books and the many promotional pieces that authors need, such as posters, banners, postcards, one-sheets, business cards, logos, and more. Visit ncgraphics.com and see what authors and publishers have to say about their award-winning books and how NZ Graphics can make your book the success it was meant to be. That's nzgraphics.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
All righty. So we're talking about the new phenomenon that if you're going to be speaking about your book, which you should be, because when you speak on your books about your book, positioning yourself as the expert, go to, I don't care if it's fiction or nonfiction, talking sells books. People want to take you home with them. And that's how I moved, hundreds of thousands of books through my career. So with us is Hayley Foster, who she's known as the short talk expert, and she has coached hundreds individuals of that went forward with TEDx presenting, and that your listener, my listeners are really the ideal candidate to speak to someone, learn from someone like Hayley. She's going to be at the AuthorU extravaganza, May 7 through 9. If there was a reason, I can tell you, we've got people who had booked some tickets from Memphis, Tennessee yesterday. They were able to fly to Denver for under $100 round trip. How cool is that? Have you got your tickets yet, Hayley?
Oh, yeah. I got my tickets as soon as we agreed. I'm very excited to be there.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's talk about some of these things. So we've got a little bit of history, which I didn't know, and I'm thrilled to have that. So what's the impact? Let's just get into it. So what has TED done to change our current culture as it is for learning, education?
Right. So TED, it's permeated popular culture now, and it's also changed what the public expects from speakers. And so conferences, associations, corporations who are putting together their own events, they're all asking for TED-style talks. And also, it started this wave of expecting really high-quality information delivered in a short format. And, the public now can just swipe in 30 seconds. They don't get it. They're not interested. You're gone. So we could, of course, talk about this forever, but what we will say is that we know that authors who speak sell more books, as Judith was saying, and it's very important to be prepared with what the public is willing to hear. So one of the highest profile ways you can promote your book is by speaking at a TEDx event, although you're typically asked as an expert, and then you just happen to have a book. But you wouldn't have a book if you weren't an expert. You see how that works?
Mm-hmm. Or you may create one really fast.
Well, that's possible. I'll tell you, there is a fellow, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, David Bezapel, who created this series called Contagious Optimism, which the Volume 2 just came out. It was featured in Reader's Digest as one of the top 20 reasons that 2014 would be better for us all. Now we're in 2015. And he did a talk at TEDx Delray Beach in 2013 that I coached him for, and we knew that he was going to have to do a book tour. So we created a TED-style talk that would promote the book so that when he was finished, he could use it on the tour.
Well, how fabulous is that? I mean, it's called repurposing, so which is what you want to do. So it is the way, and that it's always good to be able to. I've been in situations where, as we went out to the segue to the first break, is that at my conference a couple of years ago, the opening speaker just blatantly stood up there and said, "I'm going to run 30 minutes over," and too bad. and I wanted to get the hook and yank him off. I didn't care how big he was. And what it puts huge pressure on, and, a savvy speaker really recognizes, who follows that it's been out there and it has some legs to them, will recognize what's going on and can do trimming and get things back on track instead of keep going everything over and creating chaos for the rest of the day. And I know I've certainly done it.
Well, actually, that's a great segue into the difference between a short talk and a TED-style talk. Can I go into that for a moment?
Absolutely. Let's do that.
All right.
And let's talk the minutes. What is the minutes that a short talk is versus a TED talk?
So a short talk refers to the length of time it takes to deliver the talk. So any talk that's given in 20 minutes or less is a short talk. So a TED talk is a short talk, but a short talk is not necessarily a TED-style talk. There is a distinction. So
Alrighty.
in the case that you were saying, and this is what sparked my thoughts on this, is that a speaker who's giving an abbreviated version of their keynote is not giving a TED-style talk. They're giving a short talk. And it could be a fabulous short talk. And in the case that you had mentioned, where somebody else went over and a savvy speaker can save the meeting by trimming their own talk, knowing what they can take out and still have a successful presentation, that ends up being a short talk. So also, I like a top 10 list, which could be very value-rich. That's a great short talk, but it's not a TED-style talk. A CEO that's maybe communicating their vision to their board of directors or their staff, a demonstration of a new product being brought to market, these are all short talks, and they're great, but they're not TED-style talks. TED-style talk is one that communicates a single new idea we're spreading with support and resonance in the TED style. And if you've been online, you know all TED Talks are not the same. There are many kinds of TED Talks. Some are compelling stories. We'll get like a call for community action, maybe a new twist on an old idea. We do get demonstrations of cool technologies, but they are one idea supported by analogies and stories. It's not something that has lots of strands to it. When you walk away from that TED Talk, you can repeat what that was about, what the compelling core message is.
And that's what that's the critical thing, the ahas that stick to you versus getting lost and everything. And I know I've watched a lot of TED Talks, and I always love the ones that actually I love humor. I love it when they can use some humor in, and I've seen people dance around on stages and be a little funky who are really dead serious topics, but they just bring it together and they end up engaging everyone, and it's huge in 18 minutes or less.
Correct. And when you think about that, you have to think about all of the components that go into a TED-style talk. So you have your physical pieces of the talk, right? So you have content, and then you have visuals, and then you have delivery. And one thing I'm very adamant about is we do not decorate our talks. Mm-hmm. So we only use visuals if visuals are helpful to move the story along. If it can tell me something that I couldn't say that fast, then we use it. And we'll go into that more as we get into the conversation about mistakes people make.
Well, I love that you bring that up, because that as an certainly participant and observer of TED Talks, that and someone who's been out there for a long time speaking, that when you're on some of these stages, when you have a screen behind you that is so huge and overwhelming, that for an amateur speaker it can really become extraordinarily distracting and overwhelming to them. And so sometimes this is a really example of when less is actually more.
Well, and also when I have a sub-specialty in working with professional speakers. I've worked with over 100 professional speakers for sure. And a lot of them don't use visuals, and they think because they're doing a TED-style talk or a TEDx talk, they have to. This is really not the time to experiment. If you're really engaging, if you can have an audience in the palm of your hand just by speaking, don't use any visuals. You don't need them. That's not true with the general public, but with professional speakers who have a lot of experience, just the tenor of their voice, the rise and fall, the cadence, the way that they tell the story, that's compelling enough. And what happens is when you put up a visual, anything that is said sort of goes into the background, because primarily we start visual. So depending on how long it takes you to metabolize what you're reading, the speaker is going to sort of recede into the background for that period of time. So be careful about that. But before we start developing content, I have to tell you that the coaching experience with me is very personal, and I never start by researching the person or their expertise or their content. The first thing that I'll do is I'll talk to them about their passion. And I think that's what makes a difference, because it yields authenticity. Passion shows that you're really connected to yourself and what's important to you. And so first we talk about personal passion. What is it that makes you want to get up in the morning? And I don't even care what it is. It's no judgment zone, judgment-free zone. It could be your grandson. It could be golf. It could be tree frogs. I don't care. It's all about you. What's your passion? And then we talk about what you're passionate about connected to your material, what it is that you know, everything that you've written, everything that you've spoken, every class you've taken, all of that with your experience together, your passion personally, your passion about your work, your knowledge, because after all, you can ask Mr. Google anything these days. Why do we need you to deliver the message?
And let's hold on that. Yeah, Hayley, let's hold on that. We're going to take one more break here, and we'll come back, and we're going to find out, why do they need you? This is Judith Briles. It's AuthorU, your guide to book publishing.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
Since 1987, Color House Graphics has set the standard for quality book production. Whether you decide to print a small quantity of books or need a large print run, depend on Color House to help you. You'll receive professional help and advice the moment you reach one of our representatives. If you mention hearing about us on your guide to book publishing, Judith Briles, we will provide you a discount on the first order you place. To speak with a project manager, call us toll-free at 800-454-1916 or visit us at www.colorhousegraphics.com.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
When Ned Thompson and Harry Shore started Thompson Shore in 1972, they believed employees with great character would make up the best company. They were right. They hired people who were not only experts in bookmaking, but who were obsessed with quality and delivering exceptional customer service. Almost 40 years later, Thompson Shore remains a 100% employee-owned company. Ned and Harry knew that successful customer projects are a direct result of empowered employees. We specialize in all books for large and small publishers. Creating beautiful and well-made books, we're dedicated to pleasing our customers by making the experience a good one from start to finish. The personal touch we have with our customers allows us to be innovative in solving their most difficult challenges. Our platform also ensures that we can remain flexible to meet our customers' unique needs and expectations. Our marketing kit can create buzz for your title, enhancing the promotion of your book during infancy. When you need to test the market to gauge your future sales, we can provide digitally printed books that will transition seamlessly into a larger offset run. From ebook to hard copy to delivery, our skillful customer service teams are at the ready to answer your most pressing question. At At Thompson Shore, we know that making the highest quality books requires more than just best technologies. It requires superior customer service, professionalism to the trade, and commitment to environmental and social values. With these standards of excellence in place, you can be sure that we will always help you put your best book forward.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. Coming up, you'll hear more about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
So what we're doing is we're talking about with the expert, the short talk expert, Hayley Foster, who will be at the AuthorU extravaganza, and you should be there too. There are great air rates going on right now to Denver, Colorado, and you want to come in like on the evening of the 6th because we start bright and early on the 7th and we end at 5 o'clock on the 9th. And Hayley is speaking on really how to create that that short talk. And really, it's so critical for every author to understand this concept and what's current in the way you present yourself and go out. And Hayley's got a couple of questions that she always asks her coaching clients. So let's just jump into those because it really ties into when I've talked to you in the past about why you need to know how to pitch yourself and your book. So,
well, that'd be
Hayley?
great. And I was just talking when we left at the break about passion before preparation, because after all, there's information overload. Why do we need you to deliver this message? So a question that I ask in all of my training, seminars, all of my coaching clients get this question to start. So I want you to take a moment, listen carefully, and sort of turn it around in your mind. And here it is. Out of all of your body of work, what is the one thing about which you are most passionate at this time? Out of all of your body of work, what is the one thing about which you are most passionate at this time? And what's really important about this is that, you write a book, it's a couple of years to get it done, and then you get it edited, you get it on the road, and that's 3 years out from your original ideas. And what we want to do is make sure that whatever you're talking about in your talk is something that sizzles for you, that speaks from your authentic self about what's really important right now. And you can really tell the difference, can't you, Judith?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. So the obvious question, the answer for me personally would be authors and publishing. And that's where I drive all my attention. Now I have a doctorate in business. I have an expertise in conflict and sabotage in the female-dominated workplace. I was extraordinarily passionate about that. What people, the toxicity and what they did to each other. Can you bring me in and talk me? And could I get going and talk about? Absolutely. But my current passion really has been for the last 8 years exclusively as I phased that out in the publishing arena. And it's not that I didn't talk about and do publishing-related things, 30 years ago, but it wasn't the height of my passion. Dealing with toxic people was.
And that's something we want everybody to be able to identify in their own work. For me, it's about working with smart people who have good new ideas for the good of humanity. That's my sweet spot. That's my favorite thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
great.
You're right. And part of what I learned is that strategy includes knowing who not to speak to, just like you were saying. What am I willing to let go of? What am I willing to say no to? Mm-hmm. And it's amazing because I think there's a scarcity mentality. We think if we say no, then we're going to lose something. And
yes,
what I find is that I just sort faster, that the right client is on my doorstep faster if I say no to the wrong one.
Yeah, and let me throw out something for our listeners that one of my keepers is, and it's one of the quotes in my book, Snappy, Sassy, Salty, and it's simply this: if you never say no, your yeses become worthless. It is really important to know who you need to say no to, so you can let those yeses just flow through to you. So, all right, what's our next question, Hayley?
Well, the next question I would ask, and it would depend on the audience, but for this audience, I'll use book. So sometimes it's a speaker and it's talk. Sometimes it's a business owner, and so it would be product. But the focused question is, tell me what your book is about in 2 sentences.
And this is a huge challenge for so many authors. And I'm even tougher because I want you to do it in 1 sentence.
Oh, tell me about that. Why only 1? I give them 2.
Because too many authors get diarrhea of the mouth, and they go on. They want to tell you how this grew out of a concept they had in a dream, in the middle of the night and all that. So I tell them to imagine you're looking at a TV guide or something, and they're describing the movie of the week. What 1 sentence do you get? And when they learn how to do that, Hayley, they get succinct, they get very clear, and they use the right keywords that will then say to the listener, tell me more, which is what the response is I want.
Yes, I think that's true with talks as well. And I think one of the things that happens is that people are used to writing for people like themselves. And what you have to do is shift the way that you think and write and speak to people other than people like yourself, because otherwise you won't ever capture any new audience.
Well, not only that, but that really isn't what you're writing for, may not be for you. It may be for a totally other person. And so you have to really imagine, is this person male or female, or it doesn't matter. Are they married or single? Do they have certain lifestyles that could be a challenged or enhancing? Are they smokers? Have they been divorced? Or they like to drink? Or, I come from Denver. A lot of people like marijuana. It's not my thing, but a lot of people do. What do they like to do for sport? Where do they work? I mean, literally, I like to say, build a Bible for your audience of what the typical one looks like. And I know as a speaker, I would always go out. I mean, I greeted people as they came in and sat down. I wasn't waiting on the stage. I was out at the door welcoming them to try to pick up little nuances so I knew who my players were, that when I was moving around in the audience, because I never stood behind any lector, and that's a foreign thing to me, that I had my connectors that would help ground me and I could accelerate from there.
Well, that's very TED-like, because if you're doing a TED-style talk, there is no lectern, no podium.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Now, so what I would love to do, because you have some, one of your things is, what goes into that TED Talk. So let's say that we're doing a TED style, which is going to be 18 minutes or less. What are those core ingredients that a presenter has to do?
So let me give you an update. Even though it was always kind of the tagline was the talk of your life in 18 minutes, it's really down to 15.
Oh, well, even better. Okay.
Okay, so that you know. And in fact, I'll be heading out to Vancouver and then Whistler, and I'll be speaking to the global TEDx organizers about how to get the most out of their speakers. And that's one of the things we'll be covering, is about how it's been condensed. Even in the 6 years that I've been doing this, 18 used to be it. Now it's 15. There are many talks that only have 5 minutes. And in fact, if you don't believe that you can say something that's really compelling in 5 minutes, I have several talks that I refer people to. One of them is Rick Elias, What I Learned When My Plane is Crashing. And he was on the plane that suddenly landed in the Hudson, and he gives an incredible talk in less than 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So you have to think about really boiling down what it is that is your essential core message. And that's the first thing that I do. So once we go through a series of questions, what I'm looking for is a single core message that can have support and resonance. That's what we're trying to do here. One core message, not 10, not 3, 1. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of mistakes, actually, that people make as they're constructing their talks. And so I wrote this little book that Judith was so kind to tell you about, called Don't Tank Your TED Talk. And there was a pattern that began to emerge, and so it was irritating. And that was really the reason I wrote the book, because I was so irritated.
Uh-oh.
So if you'd like, I'll go through some of those. Would you like that?
Let's do that, yeah.
Okay. So I would say that one of the biggest mistakes that people will make is insisting on the maximum time. And just like Judith said, there will be people who are given 45 minutes who then appropriate for themselves an extra 15 minutes. Well, that would be 4 talks to us, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right? But see, longer isn't better. You're not necessarily going to do a better job. They're not going to walk away with a more impactful experience because it was longer. What's really important is that your talk gets the amount of time your talk needs. So you can't think about taking a keynote and trimming it backwards so that you can fit it into the 18 or 15 minutes. You have to start by constructing a TED-style talk. Does that make sense?
Sure. All right. So the short is better, which we've said before. I know we have 1 more minute before our final break. So I think that if what we did, so if let's say we've got you to core, you understand what that passion is, you really do know who that ideal reader, that ideal listener, that ideal audience. And I think that the first thing, and I know it's one of your mistakes in the Don't Tank Your TED Talk, is that I see this happen with a lot of speakers. They seem to think that they need to warm up the audience instead of coming out with pow, which is what you have to do, I think, especially in a short talk.
Right. And in fact, not starting strong is what we can come back on after break.
Great. Well, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to dig into that, and we're going to go through some of these critical elements of creating the new style of speaking today. And I think that if you can get it on your resume that you know how to do a short talk, I mean, you'd like to have that in your bio. And especially if you're in the corporate world, the association world, they're going to be looking for this to hire speakers that are skilled in this area. I'm Judith Briles. With me is Hayley Foster, who coaches speakers and authors in creating those short talks. We'll be right back.
This is your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. And we'll be right back with more great information right after these.
The book shepherding concept is simple. The publishing world is changing, and so must you. You need an experienced shepherd and a guide to partner with you as you create, strategize, develop, publish, and achieve your publishing goals. You can't do it alone without paying the price. You can spend your money creating a book that turns out to be so-so, or you can create a book that looks and feels classy, builds your brand, and is a financial success, a bestseller. It's your choice. You choose. You need the book shepherd. Publishing is riddled with obstacles, sometimes nightmares for the author. You don't need problems. You want solutions. Dr. Judith Briles will shepherd you through the maze and the chaos. At times, she's had to step in and rescue a book that has been sabotaged by a publisher or by a publishing service provider or sometimes even the author themselves. Judith Briles is the book shepherd if you want to create a book with no regrets. Give her a call today, 303-885-2207. That's 303-885-2207, or email her at judith@briles.com. By the way, Briles is spelled B-R-I-L-E-S. Follow Judith on Twitter at My Book Shepherd and on Facebook at The Book Shepherd.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, broadcasting quality programming to the world.
At Total Printing Systems, customer service is our priority. We are located in Southern Illinois. Our employees have an average of 18 years experience and know that customer relationships are important to our continued success. We have been a short-run book printer for nearly 40 years and always stay at the forefront of technology. Our niche is from 1 to 5,000 copies. Today, we offer digital, black and white, and 4-color high-speed inkjet printing, a cost-effective way to introduce color into your short-run titles. We, of course, offer traditional offset printing as well. Bindery is done in-house, from adhesive case binding to PUR perfect binding to mechanical binding of all types, including side sewing. We provide warehousing, kitting, distribution, inventory management, a new print-on-demand facility, streaming browser-based ebooks, and bookstore. Call us at 1-800-465-5200 for a quote on your next book project. You can also visit our website at www.tps1.com.
Welcome back to your guide to book publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. If you want to write and publish a book, if you want to be successful as an author, your guide to book publishing, everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask, is for you. Stay tuned and you'll hear about statistics, scenarios, and strategies on what to do now to get you published. So let's get back to the show. And here again is your host, Dr. Judith Briles.
Okay, so in our last segment, we're going to go through a few of them. We've got 12 mistakes in her book, but we're just going to touch on a few of those and we've already kissed a couple. So we're going to expand them with Hayley Foster, the author of Don't Tank Your TED Talk. And I should say, you know, you're not going to get this on, I don't think this is available on Amazon. They have to get it through your website, do they not? Hayley?
It's website and Apple products. It's in iBook.
It's in iBooks. So you can go to iBooks or you can go to Hayley's website, which is shorttalkexpert.com. That's shorttalkexpert.com. All right.
And anyone who'd like to reach me can email me at Hayley, Hayley, at shorttalkexpert.com.
There you go. All right. So starting strong. So I'm just going to say I'm going to turn this over to Hayley, but the last thing I want to hear a speaker that I'm coaching when I work with authors and starting to talk on their books is I don't want you to come in and thank them for inviting you to Duluth.
Hallelujah.
I don't want to hear about, isn't the weather beautiful? Boring. Gag me. You come in and you start strong. Okay, Hayley, take it from there.
Okay, so one of the mistakes that people make often, and I heard Judith talking about it in terms of writing as well, is not starting strong because you have to have an immediate hook, a twist, something that instantly grabs the audience and says, listen to me. And that is a mistake that people make. So one of the things that I can give you is a couple of hints of how to construct a strong start.
Sure.
There's some really great examples of them online in TED Talks. One of them is Daniel Pink, who opens his talk on mastery by saying something surprising. He says, in my youth, I did something I would later live to regret. I went to law school. Right? Now, what that is doing is it is giving you a lot of information. He doesn't take himself seriously. He's well educated. He pokes fun at attorneys. He's funny. He's sharp, right? So you get a lot of information in that, and it's something you don't expect him to say. You expect him to say, oh, I fell off a roof or something like that, okay? So that's one of the ways to do it. When you make an engaging comment, Dr. Joel Levine, who talks about the Mars Aries flyer, says, we're going to talk about 14.9 billion years of history in 18 minutes. That's approximately X number of years per minute. It was kind of cute. It's a science talk, right? Mm-hmm. And we have Brene Brown. Now, Brene Brown really got the golden ring of what can happen to a person who speaks in a TEDx event because she talked at TEDx Houston, and her talk went to 430,000 views on YouTube before TED picked it up. TED picked it up, went over 1 million views. They invited her to speak. She did a talk on shame. The beginning of her talk on shame, she does something really smart. She uses self-disclosure. Okay, she's a vulnerability expert. Perfect. And she says something funny. She says, the day after my TEDx Houston talk, I woke up with the biggest vulnerability hangover of my life. Another opening that gives you all kinds of information in one sentence, self-disclosure. You've got her expertise. You know that she's been a TEDx speaker. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like, you can get a lot of information in that first sentence to really grab the attention of your listener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, which is very important. Okay, so the coming out with something besides mundane is what we're saying, and I think that putting yourself vulnerable. I actually used to start with I usually started with a story, one of my own stories, and a fun story, and then it always was a factor of who my audience was. Now, the story I'm going to mention to you, I'm not going to tell it because we don't have the time, because it takes 4.5 minutes. But that it
which,
was
by
about,
the way, is a whole talk.
Exactly, and but I guess that could be a whole story because I know how I could close it up.
Yeah, right. So there are TED style talks that the story is the talk.
Exactly. And this what happened is that I was at a gig and I go through this deal. I had just passed a big birthday. It was a 4-0. My daughters did the stuff. But the reality is I stepped out of the car to go make the presentation and my underwear fell off. All right. So I build the whole thing around that. And then I rehook it because the book I'm talking about is my book called The Confidence Factor. You know, and one of the taglines I would bring in is sometimes we lose our confidence and we drop it on the pavement of life. And what we have to make a decision is, do we step over and keep moving on, or do we struggle and keep trying to pull it up, realizing it doesn't fit in the first place? And, you know, you can do things with that.
That's adorable.
Thank you.
Well, because it gives you a visual. See, that's part of what's really important. It engages more of your senses. Now I have a picture in my mind of you stepping out of the car, the panties falling down. Oh my dear, I have to go to this presentation. It's extraordinary.
Oh, and it goes on. But the thing is, I actually got help choreographing that. So I did the visuals. And you see, I became I didn't need any backdrop. I was the visual. You saw me stepping out of the car. You saw me moving, you know, from sitting the position into a quasi sitting into a fully erect position. I had sound effects as they went shoo, and they fell off. I did all kinds of stuff. But that's what you do to open up a talk, something that will grab them that they don't expect.
Agreed.
So, all right.
So one of the things that comes to mind then would be that is something that even though it happened some time ago, it's still fresh to you. And even when you tell it now, it's not tired. And you never want to use tired material. And so you have to dig deep for your new idea or your unfamiliar twist on a familiar idea, something that will be fresh.
Which is important. That freshness is, and one of the ways that you can keep things fresh is, you know, the term newsjacking. There is all kinds of information going on all the time that you could take an old story, an old starting, and there may be something just circulating down, around in the cyber world or on, the blatant TV that everyone is seeing that you could loop into quite easily and perk it up.
And also, you have to let down your resistance to being vulnerable and be willing to open up to what you don't know and let go of where you are so you can go to a new place. And that's scary for people. But in order to stay relevant, you have to do it.
And I have to share with you, and I won't talk about my underwear anymore, but for 5 years, I couldn't tell anyone that happened. And if anyone called me from Seattle, which is where it happened, to ask me to speak, I always said, I'd love to do it, but I'm already booked, because my fear was everyone knew I lost my underwear in Seattle, and how could I possibly go back to that town? Now I tell everybody. But those things do happen.
Well, you might also, it's one of the cautionary things is using other people's tired material. We were talking about a situation that you have to tell them this story. It's so funny.
Well, what I told Hayley is, one of the things, there's two things that bore me very quickly. People who can't tell jokes and they do it badly. Because I think jokes usually fall flat in a presentation. Stories hook people on because you can develop those visuals and you can have fun with them. And usually there's a truism to them where we all know a joke's a joke. And I've also seen gender issues where men seem to do a better job at telling jokes than women. With that said, I was at a conference not too long ago, and the first 3 words came out of the speaker's mouth, and I turned to my friend, and he says, I know what story he's told me, and I heard that over 30 years ago. And by God, it was almost word for word the story, which he told is his story, but I knew it wasn't his story. Word for word about getting bad news and how it needed to be set up. And, you could, instead of telling, mom's died, you might want to say, the cat's on the roof and
it's it's fallen. Your cat is dead story.
Exactly.
I don't even know that story.
Exactly. And I, the first 3 words opened it up. So.
Don't do that, people.
Yeah, don't do it. And in fact, what both Hayley and I are telling you is if you're going to do stories, make them your stories. Tell your own stories. We all have stories. If you start thinking about it, that you can use. At one time I ran into the butt of an elephant. I didn't. All of a sudden it just dropped in. Don't you remember the time we were in Vegas, Mom? My daughter, you ran into the elephant. I started using that in dealing with conflict resolution. It was way fun. It was my story. So use your own stuff.
And if you have trouble figuring out what that is, there's a couple of things you can do. One is you can keep a journal. So people used to do this on paper. I do everything on my iPhone now, I have to say. So I have a notes section of my iPhone. And when something happens that's kind of noteworthy, it's funny, it's poignant, whatever, I just take a note on it. And I will lean on my colleagues because sometimes you can't see the label when you're in the jar, and it takes somebody else to help you to craft that.
What a great phrase. I have to write that one down, Hayley. You can't see the label.
Use it as long as you tell them where you got it from. But it's true. Because you can't see for yourself sometimes the poignant message or the funniest aspect. You just knew that it was something important or it was noteworthy. And working with somebody else, and that's why I think getting a book writing coach, getting a speaker coach is really helpful because it's a collaborative process that we help to extract from you what you don't know is in there.
And with that, we're going to have to close. This hour has whizzed by. With me has been the fabulous Hayley Foster. Come meet her, come hear her, come get some coaching tips and learn all about how to create a short talk out of your book that will just grow your speaking career, if you didn't know you had one, exponentially. I'm Judith Briles. It's AuthorU, your guide to book publishing. And thank you, Hayley, for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being a part of Your Guide to Book Publishing. Everything you want to know but didn't know what to ask. With your host, Dr. Judith Briles. Each week, a variety